Welcome to Across Africa, our weekly roundup of stories from across the continent. I'm Julia Kim. Coming up in the programme. Local fabrics and traditional outfits have always been part of the rich tapestry of Somali culture. But today, weavers are struggling to preserve their craft in the face of fast fashion. The past meets the present through photography. We'll look at how a project in the Democratic Republic of Congo is bringing the country's history back to life. And young offenders in Senegal are taking a stab at fencing. Organisers hope it will develop their self-discipline and prepare them for life on the outside. But first, Somali weavers are coming under threat from fast fashion. They're trying to preserve the use of local textiles and traditional garments, but their businesses are being threatened by imports of inexpensive clothes from China, Europe and the US. Nicolas Germain tells us more.
Some Somalis worry that these weavers of the country's traditional fabric known as al-Hindi could be the last of their kind. The influx of cheaper textiles, new and second-hand from Europe, China and the US, means their livelihoods are under threat.
I've been doing this job for 40 years. I earn just $2 a day. It's not enough. I have bills for my family, and if one of my kids were to get sick, I could not buy medicine for them. But I don't know any other profession.
Analysts say textile industries all over East Africa have ground to a halt over the last 30 years because of cheap imports. Some customers try to defend the local traditions.
I buy these clothes to promote local production and encourage them to make more clothes. I've spent about $29 for 4 pieces.
Traditional weavers are also supported by some shop owners.
These clothes are much better than the imported clothes. Their quality is superior since they were woven by hand. The market isn't good these days. I'll keep marketing traditional clothes and also telling people that they're not expensive.
Some countries like Rwanda recently raised import tariffs on used clothing, but several others like Kenya, Tanzania and Uganda, who had initially pledged to do the same, later backed down after receiving threats of retaliation by the Trump administration.
Let's turn our focus now onto the Democratic Republic of Congo next. And curator and photographer Baudouin Bikoko's latest project is a compelling look at the country's history and development. The exhibition, called Congo Mirror, mixes some of his own work with vintage snapshots from Congolese photographers. Thomas Nicolon sent us this report.
DR Congo in a rear-view mirror. This is how photographer Baudouin Bikoko devised his latest project, called Shadows, Colors and Lights. A series of photographs that encourages the public to question the history of Congo, but also the future.
It's a reminder of past decades. I'm juxtaposing the past with the present and showing the public that the past and the future are just the same thing.
Baudouin also dusted off vintage photographs from great Congolese photographers like Jean Desparat or Ambroise Ngaimoko. These images were taken in the 50s and 60s and reflect an ever-changing Congo.
This photo was right after independence, and we can see race mixing. I mean, some white people and some black people were coming together and saying, "Let's have fun. Let's dance and sing. After all, we're all human."
Baudouin has been a photography enthusiast since he was a child, and he grew up to be not only an artist, but also a curator of photography. Today, he wants to share his personal collection of negatives and old snapshots through exhibitions.
Since I support photography as a job, since I'm here to reassert the value of photographs and their authors, I told myself I should show this to everyone and tell everyone that it belongs to them as well.
After many an exhibition in Kinshasa, Baudouin Bikoko is now working on his biggest project yet, a Congolese Center for Photographic Art, where people from all backgrounds can come and admire images of DR Congo today, tomorrow, and of course, of times gone by.
Now, the Congolese government and Doctors Without Borders have confirmed that over 1,000 people so far have recovered from Ebola. The virus has killed over 2,000 people since August 2018, but better access to vaccines and improved screening processes have led to a reduction in new cases. But the NGO warns that the epidemic is far from being under control.
In the early morning, Congolese school children are among the first to arrive at the busy Mpondwe border crossing. But before they can head off to their school in neighbouring Uganda, they disinfect their hands with water mixed with chlorine and have their temperature taken to check for symptoms of Ebola. Precautionary measures like this have been in place since August 2018, when a new Ebola epidemic broke out in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Normal days, we always screen around 6,000 to 10,000 travelers.
At Nyabugando Primary School, there are over 150 students from DRC, more than 10% of the school's population. It has set up an Ebola task force to educate children and communities about the virus and preventative measures.
We are always washing our hands, and we don't just welcome visitors. Before we welcome them, they first go for the checkup. When they check up them, is when they come back at our home and welcome them as visitors.
The task force also seeks to increase awareness amongst parents.
At the beginning, some of the parents, those parents from Uganda, had a negative attitude, saying that those children from Congo will affect their children. But after teaching them the procedures which we normally follow, then we had to come to a resolution, and that one ended.
East Africa has been on high alert since the outbreak was declared in the eastern DRC provinces of North Kivu and Ituri. Instead of closing its border with neighbouring DRC, in this part of Uganda, the focus is on disease checkpoints and education, with an aim to spread knowledge rather than the virus.
Now, there's some good news for cancer sufferers in Senegal. From the 1st of October, patients have benefited from free chemotherapy for breast and cervical cancer. Although government subsidies don't extend to all cancer treatments, the cost of some have been reduced by 60%. France 24's team visited the only chemotherapy centre in the Senegalese capital.
36-year-old Diao has cervical cancer. Her sister Adama comes with her to the hospital Le Dantec in Dakar. It's the first time that she's come to the cancer clinic since it was announced that chemotherapy drugs would be free.
Chemotherapy was very expensive. It was difficult. We had to pay 25,000 francs here, 50,000 francs there, 20,000 more on top of that. Today I've come here and the treatment is free.
Until now, Diao paid around €100 every 3 weeks to have access to chemotherapy. A fortune for the mother of 8, who depended entirely on her relatives' financial support, like the majority of patients.
I didn't even have enough money to pay my transport to get here. At home, it's rare that we eat 3 times a day, so you can imagine how difficult it's been for me to be treated.
The government subsidy on cancer treatment is for chemotherapy only. Surgery or even radiotherapy remains at the patient's cost. The medical team at the clinic believes nonetheless it's a start that will make all the difference for some patients.
We hadn't heard from around 30% of patients, and when we called them, they said they couldn't afford to come and follow their chemotherapy, especially as often as they needed to come and do it.
A lot still needs to be done for these patients, says the Senegalese League Against Cancer. The non-profit is now pushing the government to focus on breast cancer prevention.
They can reduce the cost of a mammogram. For cervical cancer, they can focus and inform the public so that children from the age of 9 can be vaccinated and then get a checkup for cervical cancer.
Around 2,500 new cases of breast and cervical cancer are diagnosed in Senegal every year.
Now, staying in Senegal, young offenders behind bars in the town of Thiès are being encouraged to take up arms. Organisers of the prison's fencing programme believe that clashing with swords improves inmates' self-control. The initiative began 7 years ago and is expected to be extended to other prisons.
Once a week, the young delinquents who are behind bars in the Senegalese prison in the town of Thiès get to leave their cells for a few hours. They take a minibus to go to a fencing training. It's a sport that helps you improve your self-control, according to one young woman who is in detention for robbery.
Thanks to fencing, I feel more confident. I can concentrate more. I'm more in control.
300 men and women have followed this training since it first began 7 years ago. The project's coordinator says fencing transforms the young prisoners.
When I see the youth come out of prison, they're tense. They're tense, they're not open, they're a bit closed off. But as soon as we bring them to do fencing, they start the session and they start to enjoy themselves. Their faces start opening up a little.
The Thiès prison is Senegal's second largest, and the authorities want to extend the program to other jails as they are satisfied with its results.
They learn to be more honest, to respect rules, because through the rules of the game of fencing, they learn to respect rules in general, to accept defeat, that sometimes things work out, sometimes they don't, and they can control themselves better.
Despite this kind of project, Senegal's prison system has recently been criticized by the United Nations. That's because pre-trial detention for youths like these often exceeds the sentence which is later handed by the judges.
Well, that's all for this edition of Across Africa. Thanks for watching.